That is some aggressive counting. That's also a very quick 5 count, Jordan Klein. What is happening, everybody? It is Thursday, and I know I'm not usually here on the Thursday NFL Live Before Lock show, but a change of events today. Lofty's got a leak in his basement of some sorts, so he wasn't able to make it. He wasn't able to make it out here today, but he was mentioning about it. He's like, hey, I've got this leak going on. What should I do? Don't worry, I'll cover for you. I want to hang out with Neil. I want to talk about Thursday Night Football because who could not want to talk about this game? Joe Flacco, Trevor Siemian. It's probably the best Thursday Night Football game that we've had of the entire season. Amari Cooper was just ruled out, which has to make the game even better. So we're going to walk you guys through all the different scenarios of the different ways that we can approach building lineups today. And the only thing that we're going to ask from you is to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and shout out to Owner's Box, who's sponsoring the show today. If you guys haven't checked out Owner's Box yet, sign up using the link below in the description box. That is going to give you up to a $500 bonus on your first deposit there. Neil, how excited on a scale of 1 to 10 are you to be doing the show with me tonight?
11 for sure, Greg. This is super exciting for me to talk about Travis Siemian. Really excited about that. Joe Flacco has been crushing it. So yeah, I am scale of 1 to 10. I'm an 11 excitement level here.
And people in the chat, they seem a little skeptical. They think that Lofty was trying to bail after Amari Cooper got ruled out, where they're like, hey, who wants to talk about this game? But for me, I mean, I told Neil, this is my 3rd time doing a show on this slate. I had to do a couple shows early in the day. I did a Rainmaker show for DraftKings in the afternoon where I talked about this game from a Rainmaker's perspective. I did an Owner's Box show where I just built lineups for Owner's Box. But both those times, Amari Cooper was presumed in. I was kind of, because I know that he was officially listed as questionable, Neil, but I just assumed he was going to play considering that the Browns are in the playoff hunt. He just came off this crazy game. Were you caught off guard by Amari Cooper getting ruled out like 30 minutes ago?
Yeah, I was, because I tried to do my usual Showdown thread today. I got through about 80% of it, but I had just gone through and removed all of my contingency layers. I wrote it up like, oh, but he'll be a better play if Amari Cooper sits, and like removed Amari Cooper, all that stuff. Because there were like, it came out like Amari Cooper expected to play tonight. There's videos of him walking in. So I was like, okay, he's going to play. So I changed everything and I was like, okay, I'm almost ready to go. And then the news comes out, oh, he's inactive. He tried to warm up and apparently wasn't good. So yeah, it absolutely surprised me, but doesn't hurt me because I got 0 best ball teams through to the finals, Greg. It hurts the 50% of people or whatever that have Amari Cooper on their team because he blew up last week. So RIP to all those people who are relying on Amari Cooper this week. Sorry.
And congratulations to Neil, who seems to be very excited that he got no teams through. It's like, I don't even have to worry about this. It doesn't impact me at all.
This doesn't affect me. Yeah.
My team's already
one single shit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my team's. So I had an Amari Cooper team that lost by 1 point too, and I was devastated. I had Amari Cooper. I thought I was bringing in a Ramondre Stevenson, Keenan Allen team. I don't think any of them are playing. So now I'm like, okay, my team was going to lose anyway, so I feel a lot better.
All right, so now let's try to figure out, because, normally I think we'd look a little bit more at the individual players and positions as we go through here. But because this news with Amari Cooper is so new and so fresh, and most likely people who are watching the show, they haven't really heard any content where people have talked about Amari Cooper not playing today. So with that being the case, Neil, what are we looking at from the Browns pass catchers? I think that's the most relevant place to start. Who are the biggest gainers in the absence of Amari Cooper? And let's start by talking about guys like David Njoku, Elijah Moore. Where do you think the targets are going to be going? And then we can talk about some like crazy punt plays that we think could benefit from the Browns as well. But to start, just from a big picture perspective, the spend up options, which I know we're using that a little loosely because they don't really exist on this slate, but the David Njoku's, Elijah Moore type receivers, who are the high end pass catchers that you're going to prioritize from the Browns without Cooper out there?
Yeah, I mean, David Njoku looks incredible. He was going to be incredible either way over the past 4 games with Joe Flacco as the quarterback. Njoku's been targeted 37 times. He has 4 touchdowns over that span. He's just been, they've got a connection. It's been going great for them. And it's a pretty decent matchup actually for both the tight ends in this game. Like as far as the defensive weaknesses, like these are both really good defenses. They both have a little bit of a weakness when it comes to tight ends, and Njoku, obviously the better tight end, the one who's typically going to do better. So Njoku clearly benefits Elijah Moore, I would say, is the biggest beneficiary stepping into that wide receiver one role. And we've seen him. He's actually been a little bit better already with Flacco. Kind of expected that, like, they maybe had a connection based on their time in New York. You know, I was speculating that a few weeks back, and it's been sort of true. Elijah Moore with Joe Flacco, 76% route participation, 25 targets over 4 games, which that's pretty decent relative to the rest of the season, I think, for Elijah Moore. So I think he steps up, becomes a bigger part of the offense. Clearly, his projection went up like 3 fantasy points, I believe. Cedric Tillman has been actually over the past 4 games, 72% route participation, 20 targets over the past 4 games. So he has already been a little bit involved. He gets a bump for sure. So those are, I would say, the 3 like primary clearest pass catchers for the Browns: Njoku, Moore, Cedric Tillman. And then David Bell, I think, could step into a little bit of a role. Here, I'm adjusting my mic. Yeah, okay, I just adjusted my mic slightly.
Get it closer to your face.
It's still pretty close to my face. Is
Yeah,
it not
closer.
close enough?
Closer.
Not doing it this time. I got made fun of the last time I went along with this bit of eating the mic.
And put it closer and open wide, Neil. Say ah.
I've done this for you before, Greg, and people did not appreciate it in the audience, so I'm not going to do it again this time. And so yeah, beyond Njoku, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, it's kind of up in the air. Could be David Bell, 7 targets over the past 4 games. I'm a little bit of me. I kind of wonder if the tight ends are going to see the field more. Like Harrison Bryant, the backup tight end, might also be on the field a little bit more. Could see him getting a bit of a bump, but it's a little bit murky. Beyond Njoku, Moore, Tillman, it's a little bit murky. I think David Bell and Harrison Bryant are the best bets.
Yeah, so if I go ahead and look at my lineups, because I built lineups with both FanDuel and DraftKings before we started this show, and just have a sense when I ran everything through the Sims and the lineup generator, what my exposures would be if I was playing 150 lineups on both sites. And if you guys want to sign up for any of the packages that we have for NFL here at Stochastic, use the links below. We'll build some lineups over the course of the show as well. We'll open up the lineup generator and crank out some lineups for FanDuel and DraftKings and see what those look like. For me personally, Neil, when I'm building my lineups, I'm getting to a good amount of Elijah Moore and David Njoku. Elijah Moore, starting with DraftKings, is in 48.7% of my lineups. David Njoku in 42.7%. So those are the 2 pass catchers I'm getting the most of from Cleveland, from the DraftKings side of things. And then if I go ahead and look at my FanDuel exposures, for FanDuel, I'm getting to the most of Njoku. Njoku showing up in 45.3% of my lineups, a little bit overweight to the field on him over on FanDuel. And then Elijah Moore, only 29% of my lineups on FanDuel. So actually coming in well underweight to the field to more on FanDuel in favor of an Njoku. DraftKings, though, about an equal amount of both. And actually, if I look through all of my lineups on FanDuel across both teams, Njoku is actually the only pass catcher they have in north of 30% of lineups on at all from either team over on FanDuel. So Njoku, to me, pretty clearly the biggest gainer from this situation. And as is, I know you talked before about how, you know, maybe there's been a little bit of a rapport between Elijah Moore and Joe Flacco dating back to their days when they were, you know, killing it for the New York Jets. But Njoku, totally different fantasy option with Joe Flacco at the helm compared to in previous weeks when it was when it was, you know, the Deshaun Watson and all the different iterations of quarterbacks we've seen play for the Browns. So Njoku's been somebody we've seen double-digit targets in games with Flacco as of late. And now you're taking Amari Cooper out of the mix. You mentioned it's a pretty decent matchup for tight ends. So to me, Njoku is going to be the pass catcher I get to the most from this game.
Yeah, I think that will be the case for me also. Yeah, currently on DraftKings, I'm getting a little bit more Elijah Moore than Njoku, I think, just because of the price tag. But it's going to be one of those two, clearly, is going to be my leading pass catcher in terms of my exposures.
Super chat for my filler arc. And by the way, if you guys have any questions, throw them into the Discord channel. I'll be answering those over the course of the show. And I've got that open on my phone just to see if any of the questions come in here for us in Discord. But first, the super chat for my filler arc. And this isn't a question. This is just a nice comment from my filler arc. It says, came to say thanks to Greg, your Watford call and talking smack about Mo Bamba, so switched over to Reed yesterday. Helped him win $3,000 in the NBA streets yesterday. 4 points from first. Didn't even have Durant in his lineup. So my filler arc, congrats. Love to see you having the success. And True to form, he spelled my first name wrong. There's never been a time where he's gotten a super chat to us where everything has been spelled correctly. He spelled Greg, Gragg, which I didn't know that there were new ways that you could spell Greg incorrectly, but congratulations. You found a new one, my fellow. Congrats, and love to see the success. Nice hit yesterday. I'd like to see what the rest of the lineup is if you wouldn't mind tweeting it at me. But we did get a question as well from Einsteinium in the Discord chat, and he wants to know, any interest in Kareem Hunt tonight? So, we talked about the Browns pass catchers. Let's talk about the running game a little bit. Between Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford, which of the two are you prioritizing? And then also, Kareem Hunt, to the question from Einsteinium, do you like him in general?
I'm definitely prioritizing Ford over Hunt. Just looking at the past 4 games, Ford has 44 carries to Kareem Hunt's 36. Actually, that's not as big of a split as I was thinking it was, but also has 15 targets to Kareem Hunt 7. So maybe I'll go back on saying clearly prioritizing Ford over Hunt just because Hunt is 3,200 cheaper. Ford has the better role on the team. I currently have more of Ford, but I do like Hunt as a play at 5,200. He's kind of he doesn't project well enough to be 5,200. He's more of a sort of a pay up to be contrarian kind of option. We've got Hunt at just 16% ownership right now. So I don't mind that ownership for Kareem Hunt. He does have a role in the offense. He's typically the goal line back. So yeah, I think Kareem Hunt is a totally viable option. Looking at our single game tool, he does have negative leverage there, so doesn't look like incredible in the tool, but he has some contingency value on top of his standalone value if something happens to Ford. So yeah, I think Kareem Hunt very much in play. I would guess I'm going to be probably close to the field, honestly, around 16%. I don't think I'm taking a huge stand on Kareem Hunt because he is, too expensive, whereas there's not like the clearest path to him crushing. But as a goal line back and getting some carries otherwise as well, yeah, I think Kareem Hunt definitely in play. Are you playing any Kareem Hunt, Greg?
Let's see. What do I have here on Kareem Hunt? If I go ahead and look at my lineups, yeah, I hardly got to Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, actually one of the players that I have the biggest underweight stands to in the lineups I built here. Out of the top 150, only showed up in 6% of them. We have him projected for north of 20% ownership. I think Kareem Hunt would have been an interesting option if he was really contrarian, but the fact that he's actually picking up some kind of ownership, I don't really love it. Something else as well, price does not matter on this late, Neil, especially now that we have Amari Cooper out. It's really, we're just looking at who do we think are going to be the 5 or 6 highest scoring players, depending if you're playing on FanDuel or DraftKings. And I think Kareem Hunt has some touchdown equity, but I don't think he has a massive ceiling. To me, he's one of those guys where if this was a slate where we had a bunch of pay up options and you're trying to find all right, who's a low owned guy that can maybe sneak into an end zone and be optimal, I think Kareem Hunt fits the bill in that situation. But we've got him projected for 7 fantasy points. To me, there's just, unless Jerome Ford gets injured, which is always within the realm of possibilities, it's a football slate. I don't think that there's a realistic path to having a big upside to land in an optimal lineup.
Yeah, I guess my only pushback. So I agree with you. My only pushback on that is that it is a showdown slate. So you obviously you don't need as much upside. So at 5,200, he could put up 12 fantasy points and be optimal at 12 fantasy points. So I think that it's possible for him. But I agree with you. He doesn't have enough opportunity to have much shot at having a ton of upside. He's probably not going to put up 20 fantasy points in this game. I'm probably not playing any Kareem Hunt at captain. But I do think that he has, just because this game could be disgusting, 0 point, there could be very, very little scoring. So Kareem Hunt, doesn't need the same kind of upside you need on even a 2-game slate or a 3-game slate. On a 1-game slate, just getting even 11 or 12 fantasy points. If nobody else does anything, that could be enough.
All right, so let's go and talk about some of the skill position players from the Jets. We've talked about the pass catchers as well as the running backs from the Brown side of the game. And by the way, Jerome Ford, fairly high priority for me in this game for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's somewhat of a pay-up option on a slate that doesn't have them, but also really favorable game scripts. I know the Jets have a good defense. They have a good run defense. But when you consider just the game script, the Browns being favored by a touchdown in this spot, you figure the most likely scenario is them running the ball out late, and that would be a Jerome Ford type game. So I like him as a pay up option. Let's talk about the Jets and some of the skill position players we like from their side of the game, because they do have Garrett Wilson. They do have Breece Hall. These are very talented weapons, but nobody really throw them the football reliably. We've got Simeon at quarterback for the Jets, And we've seen lots of different QBs be in and out for the Jets this year. None of them good. None of them good. Unless, if you want to consider Aaron Rodgers here, whatever. Rodgers threw, was it one pass before tearing his Achilles? So we've seen the Jets have no success with the litany of different QBs that they've ended up playing this season. So let's start by talking about the running game, Neil, where Breece Hall is one of the only existing pay-up options on the slate. It's a brutal match for him against the Browns. The game script isn't ideal. So what do you want to do with Breece Hall?
Yeah, I like Breece Hall quite a bit, to be honest. I was looking through the last 4 weeks. If you look at every running back in the NFL over the past 4 weeks, Breece Hall has the second most expected fantasy points of all running backs, because over the past 4 weeks, he has 49 rushing attempts, so just over 12 per game. He also has 32 targets, 8 targets per game over the past 4 weeks for Breece Hall. Obviously having Simeon in there, and now Greg, I've forgotten I knew what his first name was before you made a joke calling him Trevor Seaman or whatever.
So I'll give everybody a little bit of context to this. So I messaged you and Jordan about 45 minutes ago and said, "Hey guys, I'm covered. Lofty isn't able to make the show. I'm going to cover for him, and just giving you guys a heads up." So Jordan said, "Bro, do you even know ball?" To which Neil said, "Yeah, who's the starting quarterback for the Jets?" And I said that it was Tim Seaman, I think was what I said.
No, you said Travis Seaman, which is why I keep going back. Before I knew it was Trevor Seaman earlier in the day, and then you called him Travis Seaman, and now I go back and forth.
Yeah,
Travis and Trevor, I always screw up anyway.
Yeah, so that is what I said. I said instead of Trevor Simeon, I said Travis Seaman, and now Neil doesn't know who his real name is. Like it could
exactly.
It could go either way for Neil. I didn't realize that I was planting the seed, pun intended here, planting the seed of what it was that was going to infiltrate your mind and impregnate your brain, Neil, with new ideas of what to call these Jets quarterbacks. And now look at what's happened. You don't know who's who. You don't know.
I don't know who he is anymore. Yeah, I cannot keep track of what his name is anymore. I have to look at it before I say it. Trevor Simeon. Yeah, this is, I don't know that I've ever seen. I feel like it might have happened once earlier this year, Greg, that I have seen a defense with a better projection than one of the two starting quarterbacks. That is how bad Trevor Simeon looks in our stuff today. He was projected worse than the Browns defense. I think that was the point that I was about to say before I got sidetracked by not remembering what his first name is. Yeah, he does not look great here. I forget what your original question was. Was it just about whether we're playing Simeon here?
No, I was asking about Breece Hall, and, I don't even know how we got on the Travis Seaman end of it. I mean, it's just one of those. I remember now. Yeah, it was just the seed implanted in your brain that you can't get rid of, Neil.
Yeah.
So Breece Hall, you're talking about all his expected fantasy points, and also he's been very involved in the run game as well as the pass game for the Jets. So he is somebody who, kind of regardless of game, it seems like he's going to be out there playing a bunch of snaps. There was that point in time where they were trying to reduce his workload. They said Dalvin Cook was going to play more, and now, what did that lead to? Really nothing. It didn't make a difference. There's like one game where Dalvin Cook got a few extra snaps, and it hasn't meant anything since then. So I do think that despite the negative game script, Breece Hall, it's hard for him to not be a priority.
Yeah, Breece Hall is definitely a priority. Yeah, as I said, he's just been 32 targets over the past 4 games. That is nuts. The reason that I got on the quarterback is that I was like, well, that was with different quarterbacks. Like they've had a rotating cast of quarterbacks for the Jets. So I'm not sure to what extent Simeon is actually responsible for some of those targets. But clearly Breece Hall is very clearly the number one running back here for the Jets. 77% snap share in the most recent game. He looks great. I'm going to play a ton of Breece Hall.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't done yet, do us a favor, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Every time you like this video, for every single time you like this video, we're going to get Travis Seaman. One jersey is going to be made with the name Seaman on the back of it. That's how it goes. The NFL, they're gonna start making these jerseys now based on the popularity of this show. So make sure to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and pick up your Travis Seaman jersey coming to an NFL store near you very soon. That's by the way, not a sponsor. That's not an ad read. This is just something out of the goodness of my heart that I'm doing for the people, Neil. So those jerseys, they're going to be dropping soon. But let's go ahead and look at the rest of the Jets backfield. And is there anybody that you're looking to get to behind Breece Hall?
Yeah, I am going to play a little bit of Abanaconda. He has seemingly taken over as the running back too. I mean, they said, I don't know, a month or so ago that they want to start getting their young players involved more. And they've been doing it more with the wide receivers. But over the past couple games, we have seen an increase for Abanaconda. Now that was in week 15, Abanaconda 38% snap share. So that was really promising, to Dalvin Cook just 17%. And then last week, Abanaconda down to 18% because Breece Hall was up to 77% in that game, still playing ahead of Dalvin Cook, who played 6% of snaps. So I do think that they are trying to keep Abanaconda involved. I do have interest there just as a guy who's not going to get, we're not projecting him for a ton of ownership. Over the past 4 games, looks like he's played 3 of the past 4 games, has 16 carries in that span, does have a couple targets on 15% rep participation as well. So yeah, he is my preference of the backup Jets running backs, and I'm actually currently above weight to the field on Abanaconda, and I don't feel like super strongly about it. Like, I don't think he's like an amazing play, but I do think like he's got some standalone value, some contingency value, and he is one of the better, like, cheaper options. So yeah, that is where I'm going with the backup Jets running backs.
Shout out to Chris Williams for gifting us the 5 YouTube memberships. Chris, we always appreciate your support. And so I was actually getting to some lineups with Abanaconda earlier in the day when I was running lineups through the Sims. You wouldn't think that there's a massive correlation with this, but there ended up being for me. Once Amari Cooper was ruled out, there just became a limited need to get to some of those real punt type plays. Kind of the same way that like Kareem Hunt is a massively interesting to me. It's like, what does a scenario look like where Abanaconda is in an optimal lineup? Is it a Breece Hall injury? It's always something that's on the table. Or is it something where it's a blowout and they give him garbage time run? So maybe the scenario you'd be willing to play him is like maybe Browns onslaught stack. You go 5 Browns and then he's the 1 Jet as a run back, or you're playing for like a garbage time scenario. But if I'm just running lineups like strictly using our Sims, like he's not somebody I really get to. Even if I was getting to him a little bit earlier, just didn't need the salary savings quite as much once Amari Cooper was ruled out. But Jets pass catchers now, Neil. What are you going to be doing with the wide receivers on the team? They figure to be playing from behind. The quarterback play with our guy, Travis Seaman, it's not likely to be all that good. It's not likely to be great, but the Jets are going to be trailing. It's a favorable game script for them to be throwing the football. So what are you doing with the Jets pass catchers? Are you getting to Garrett Wilson, or is there somebody else you prefer as your top overall Jets wide receiver?
I mean, it's definitely Garrett Wilson number 1 over the past 4 weeks. 40 targets for Garrett Wilson. I'll take a wide receiver getting 10 targets per game. That is really nice. Of course, he's a little bit better with Zach Wilson than he has been with other Jets quarterbacks, but still, he's getting target enough. He's a clear wide receiver 1. So yeah, Garrett Wilson number 1 for me. Number 2 would be, I mean, if we're talking just strictly wide receivers, it is pretty close here between Xavier Gipson and Jason Brownlee. I think that I lean slightly toward Brownlee, just looking at the snap share from last week. Jason Brownlee, 82%, Xavier Gipson, 62%. I don't really love Randall Cobb. I know that he was active. Alan Lazard is out, but even they just have not been playing their they haven't been playing Randall Cobb. He's played over the past, I don't know, 8 weeks or whatever. His most is of snap share, 19% snap share, just not involved enough that I think I'm going the Randall Cobb route. To me, it's Wilson, it's then Brownlee, and then Gipson. I think all 3 of them are very much in play. They're going to be out there on the field. They're going to be out there running routes. Gipson over the past 4 games. So we do have, as I said, Brownlee played more snaps last week, the most recent game. Over the past 4 weeks, Gipson does lead him in terms of route participation at 62% to Brownlee's 55%. But I'm going to take the more recent result into account more. So to me, it is Wilson, followed by Brownlee, followed by Gipson. Those 3 all very much in play, though.
Shout out to Gage Horning in the YouTube chat, who is phonetically spelling out the Jets quarterback's name for us. So right here, you see that he's put in Seaman in the chat. So yeah, don't worry. We know how to pronounce it. I appreciate the support, though, for the education there, Gage Horning. So there are some people who are confused about some people call him Trevor Siemian. Some people call him Travis Seaman. It depends, right? It's a matter of preference. I could tell you what he was called in grade school. It wasn't Simeon. Certainly wasn't in high school. So different people, different names.
I'm trying to find the comment that you're reading where he spells it out for us, and I can't find it. Oh well.
Yeah, it's like 13 comments up or so.
Okay.
All that aside, as far as the Jets on the whole, relative to ownership, we have, let's see, Garrett Wilson is projected for 40% ownership. in the flex spot on DraftKings, and then the captain ownership. And I'll do this for FanDuel as well right afterwards. 8% in the captain spot. I'm actually underweight to Garrett Wilson in both of those, both the flex and the captain, not massively so, but he's projected for about 40% ownership in the flex. I'm getting to 31%. I only have a couple of lineups with him here in the captain. So relative to ownership, what are you doing with Wilson? Because he is my favorite pass catcher from the Jets, but I still find myself underweight to him.
I am also currently underweight to Wilson. So yeah, I like him. He's clearly the top receiver for the Jets. I mean, I'm honestly right around the field. So we have him at 34.5%, or at least that's what I'm seeing on my latest refresh. And I have him at 32% currently. I might end up slightly over the field, but I'm definitely not taking. I guess my answer is I'm not really taking a big stand on Garrett Wilson. I think I'm going to be pretty close to the field overall.
And then on FanDuel, Wilson did not show up in any of my lineups as the captain, and he is in 24% of my lineups in the flex spot right now over on FanDuel. So, Neil, let's talk about the quarterbacks next. Then we'll do our favorite captain / MVP options. They'll build some lineups in the lineup generator, and then that'll pretty much take us to the end of the show. So, quarterbacks, Joe Flacco, and then, of course, our guy, Trevor Siemian for the Jets. Between the two quarterbacks, who are you going to prioritize? Because Joe Flacco is the one who projects much better, but he's also going to be a lot more popular. So we've got Siemian, who the field is not really on quite as much. Between Flacco and Siemian, if you were only playing one of them in a single entry lineup, because if you're playing a large set of lineups, you're going to get exposure to both quarterbacks in a single game setting. But if you're playing one lineup, would you be more inclined to go to Flacco, Siemian, or would you just say both?
Yeah, it is. The ownership that's an interesting wrinkle. I still think it's probably just Flacco for me. I think he's just the much better quarterback. And I like his pass catchers better overall. So despite the ownership discrepancy, I still think I'm just eating the chalk with Flacco.
Shout out to Toma, who said, keep the Jets QB's name out of your mouth. Made me laugh. Shout out to Toma. You win the YouTube chat today. That was a good one. Yeah, so in terms of my QB exposure, I do have a lot more of Joe Flacco than I do of Siemian. It's just kind of unavoidable. And also, the Browns defense is really good. The Jets defense, nothing to sneeze at either, but the Browns might have the best defense in the NFL. This is a brutal spot for Siemian, especially on a short week. So I'm going to lean more towards Joe Flacco. We have a question from Mark the Shark in our Discord channel. And Mark the Shark wants to know, for single entry, do we like the defenses? Do we like the kickers? So, Neil, defenses, kickers, if we're grouping them together, which I think is a reasonable way to look at defenses and kickers, between both defenses and both kickers, what is your favorite of the four?
Favorite of the four would probably have to be Browns defense against Trevor Siemian. Like they just it's rare that you see a defense that we have optimal 38% of the time in the flex and 7% of the time in the captain spot. The Browns defense just stands out above the rest on this slate. I agree. I typically do just put them all together and just kind of take whatever I get. Here, I do think, I mean, the Jets defense, very good also. They just have a tougher matchup with Joe Flacco. I guess they are also significantly cheaper. So to me, both defenses above both kickers for me. And I think I have a slight preference for Browns over Jets. But we actually have positive leverage on the Jets defense in the util also. So both defenses look really good to me. Slight preference for the Browns. How about you?
Yeah, I think this is a slate to be playing some defenses. I actually have the Browns in nearly half my lineups, and both DraftKings and FanDuel running lineups to the Sims. I'm getting to a good amount of the Browns defense. One of my most rostered. I don't know whether you don't call him a player. I don't really know exactly what.
Yeah, I never know either.
One of the most rostered players, I guess we'll call it, in my lineups. Yeah, it's the Browns defense. And Neil, you and I, we do the tournament strategy show on Saturdays, and usually we forego talk about defenses because I despise it so much, but you can't get away from it for this game. The Browns defense is going to be chalk. Oftentimes when there's a chalk defense in Showdown, I'll get a little hesitant to play them. Not on this point. Browns defense, good spot for them against Siemian. And now Nathan Perkins has left us a super chat, wants to know, who's our preferred kicker? Neil, if you're playing one kicker, who are you going with?
This is very much a question where I'm going to look at our single game tool because I don't really have strong opinions. I guess my natural instinct would be the Browns kicker because I think they're going to be able to move the ball and get into kicking range more. So I think I am going to go with Riley Patterson.
Riley Patterson for me as well. I got to about twice as much Patterson as what I got of Zerline.
Oh, he projects way better. Yeah, I hadn't even looked at the projection, but he projects for 2.5, more than 2.5 fantasy points better. You don't see that. Usually there's not that huge of a spread between the kickers, but yeah, here there is.
And let's talk about our favorite captain plays. So let's do this a couple of ways, Neil. We'll look at DraftKings, we'll look at FanDuel, and they'll build lineups. I know people are asking for us to build some lineups. So Jordan, get the lineup generator ready to go. So Neil and I will give out our favorite captains, and then we'll build some lineups in the lineup generator. But first here, Neil, starting with DraftKings, if you're just playing one lineup today, right? You're building one lineup on DraftKings. Who would be the captain you'd be most apt to go to in single entry? And then give me your favorite contrarian captain after that.
I think Njoku would probably be the captain that I would be most inclined to go to first.
Okay.
And then as far as contrarian option, oh, and he is also, by the way, looking at the single game tool to figure out who's contrarian. He is number one in terms of captain optimal, which makes sense. Also have positive leverage there. So really love that. If I'm trying to go a bit more contrarian, I kind of like Tyler Conklin too. So I guess I'm just tight ends all over. Tyler Conklin has the best matchup of any tight end. Like over the past 5 weeks, the Browns have given up the most schedule adjusted fantasy points to tight ends in the league. So great matchup here for Tyler Conklin. Maybe going to go a little bit overlooked there. So it would be Njoku, my favorite, Conklin, my favorite contrarian option. How about you?
Yeah, so if I'm just going to go with the popular guys, I would go to Joe Flacco as my like popular preferred option at captain. If I'm going to be contrarian, I think Jerome Ford is pretty interesting. Projected for less ownership than Joe Flacco, projected for less ownership than David Njoku. In a scenario where the passing game doesn't work out for the Browns, to me, the most likely reason it doesn't work out is because Ford runs in the touchdowns, or maybe it's Kareem Hunt gets a rushing touchdown. So I think you're getting good leverage by going to Jerome Ford instead. I end up getting overweight to him in that captain spot. So that is going to be my answer for DraftKings. And now, Neil, if we're looking at FanDuel lineups, do you feel any differently about your favorite MVP options for FanDuel?
Yeah, I mean, FanDuel is a little bit different since there is no salary multiplier. You just want your best player there. So I think it would probably be Joe Flacco on FanDuel. He is the highest captain optimal odds on FanDuel. And the price difference between him and Njoku doesn't matter because there is no salary multiplier. So yeah, probably Joe Flacco would be the first place I go. And then if I'm trying to get contrarian, I'm debating whether I would throw Simeon in there as the contrarian option. We have Simeon at just 4% captain ownership on FanDuel. Players, even bad quarterbacks can get hot from time to time. We've seen it a number of times this year. So I think Simeon would actually be my contrarian option on FanDuel at MVP. How about you? What are your choices?
Popular one, I would be going to Joe Flacco. And then if I'm going to be going to one who's a little bit more contrarian, somebody in the chat, Tolga A, saying that there is no way in hell that Ford is, I think he meant contrarian, but he said contraction. So when I look at, I have to rely on the data from our Sims tool, contest generator, our ownership projection. I'm not saying that Ford is projected for like 2 or 3% ownership or anything like that, but he's projected for less ownership than guys like Joe Flacco in the MVP spot. And a lot of times when I'm trying to figure out like, all right, how could I differentiate a lineup? It is, all right, who is somebody who not only do I think has reasonable upside, but also could be potentially leverage off of the players who are going to be popular there. And that's where I look at Jerome Ford at about a third of the ownership of Joe Flacco in the MVP spot. And yeah, I mean, he's still projected for double-digit ownership. I'm not telling you he's going to be 2% owned, but I think he's underrepresented. I think there's leverage there. So Jerome Ford on both sides. If you're going to be somebody who's a little bit less popular in the MVP or captain spot, go with Jerome Ford. All right, so let's go ahead and look at lineups in the lineup generator now. So Jordan's got this pulled up on screen. Let's start with DraftKings Showdown. We'll go actually, let's go contrarian lineups. This is a weird slate. Contrarian lineups. Do you want to go with a game script for this, Neil?
No.
No. Okay. So Neil's being a pussy. So no. Don't touch anything yet, Jordan. Don't push any buttons. I want us to do a Browns blowout game script.
Fine.
Browns up, Jets down, and contrarian lineups. Now save a bunch of them, and then we'll look at what the exposures are afterwards. So we will see which players the lineup generator is getting us the most of. And by the way, if you guys haven't checked out the lineup generator, a couple things, you should be watching Neil's videos where he goes through how he uses the lineup generator. Today might not give you the results you're looking for in terms of just copying lineups because Amari Cooper is going to be out. But it's a tool that is very easy to use, especially for newer DFS players, because you just click a couple buttons and it's going to build the lineups for you. So here we just built out 20 lineups, and now we're going to look at the exposures in those lineups. And we also built these with a Browns blowout game script, which is going to impact the lineup. So when you go and you pick a game script, it's going to alter the projections in the game scripts of those lineups to gear more towards that game playing out the way that it is in that game script. So no surprises here, Neil, considering how well we project the Browns defense. But in a game script where we're expecting the Browns to win via blowout, we're getting to a whole bunch of Browns exposure.
Yeah, that's not a surprise to me at all. I was earlier, and that's what I'm getting as well. So yeah, they look great. You can't ask for a better matchup than Simeon.
No, you cannot. This is going to be some weird matchups at the end of the season. Then, if you look at the rest of the players that we're getting in here, Njoku, Jerome Ford, Joe Flacco, no surprises there. Breece Hall showing up in a bunch of lineups as well, which tells us what, Neil? That Breece Hall is really a player who we're projecting to be kind of game script independent here. If the Jets are ahead, not all that likely of a scenario, but he's going to be running the ball out in the late fourth quarter. If they're behind, we've seen Breece Hall get, what did he finish with? 13 targets last week? 11?
Yeah, he is, as I said, 32 over the past 4 weeks total. Like he's,
some massive target share as of late for Breece Hall. So I do really view him as somebody who, no matter what the game script is, like maybe if the Jets are down like 40, then sure, they'll ease off of Breece Hall. But as long as the game is within like a couple of touchdowns, I do think we're going to see Breece Hall get a lot of passing game work late in the game. So blowout type game script, getting to a lot of the Browns defense, Breece Hall, Tyler Conklin, they're our most frequently used run backs. And then also something that stands out, Neil, is if we look at some of the captain exposures when we scroll down, the Browns defense is our most rostered captain when we looked at this game in a blowout game script, and then followed by Jerome Ford, which kind of speaks to what I was saying before, which is, all right, in the game we're expecting the Browns to be leading, it's going to be Jerome Ford running the ball out in the fourth quarter there. Anything else that you're noticing from these lineups?
Yeah, I mean, just that we are getting to a ton of defenses. Looks like we are getting to a good amount of Kareem Hunt, 29%. That's a little bit more than I honestly expected to get of Kareem Hunt, and then another 8% at captain. Yeah, no, I mean, for the most part, we are getting the players you expect. You got the quarterbacks, you got the star players, you got the defenses. I think that is generally what I would expect here. I guess I'm a little bit surprised that we're not getting to more of Njoku at captain. We only have 8% Njoku at captain there. That's a little bit of a surprise to me.
I think it's partly because we built contrarian lineups, and also partly because we picked the blowout game script, which I think favors the running game a little bit more. Like we're seeing Kareem Hunt in some lineups, Jerome Ford. So I think that's probably the reason. By the way, Teddy Wayman left us a super chat, wants to know favorite MVP on FanDuel. All things being considered, I'm going to go with Jerome Ford. If I'm just playing one and telling you who my favorite, I'm going to go Jerome Ford for that. If you were just giving him one, what would you answer for the super chat here, Neil?
Probably Flacco.
Okay.
On FanDuel.
So Teddy Wayman, couple of different Browns for you to look at there. And now let's go back into Discord. And Jordan, if you could start building some lineups for DraftKings, go and do that. And we'll check out those really quick before we get to lock. But first, Swanson79 says, ask Neil what's in the tote in the background. I'm assuming it's DFS cash that he couldn't fit on a shelf. And he wants to know, are you the real Walter White? By the way, very astute that people are noticing what's in like the way back background.
Let me see if I can see what tote he is talking about. I can't.
He's got multiple of them.
My problem is my mic is so tied up right now that the cords are so tangled that I can't really turn around and look at what he's seeing. So I want to oh, I see. That is just a mess. All right. What that actually is, Greg, is I was cleaning my office and there are several things that I bought. Like I bought sheets and like a robe for my wife, and I was supposed to return them and I never returned them. So it's a box of things that I never returned that now I need to sell at some point.
Is this Jordan who's messing?
That is Jordan.
Okay, yeah. So I see what Jordan did there. Is he grabbed the screen and pulled to the side so we get a bigger close to the tote. So Swanson79, I know that was massively disappointing, but I hope that was the answer that you were expecting there. Let's build same deal. Let's build contrarian lineups here, Jordan, but let's just go standard projections this time. And let's just really quickly save some of these and see what ends up popping up as far as our most rostered players over here for DK purposes. And I'll also read off the lineup number one. So the first lineup it spit out for us, it is Jerome Ford in the captain spot, but I think that's Bell, Njoku, Flacco,
and Simeon.
Okay, yeah. It was these are FanDuel lineups again, Jordan.
Yeah. No, is that what we tried to do?
No, draft. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Never mind. My bad. You're right. Yep, that's me being a donk. So we got Jerome Ford in the MVP spot here. And then, David Bell, David Njoku, Joe Flacco, and Simeon. Overall, our exposures, even just building a neutral game script here, we still got to 87% of the Browns defense. Neil, our data loves the Browns.
You know what my favorite build is on FanDuel, I think? Leaf salary on the table, Flacco at quarterback, Njoku, another pass catcher for the Browns, and then both defenses. Just have the only Jets exposure, because you need to play somebody from the Jets. My favorite build, I think, is just the Jets completely suck on offense, and their defense ends up being optimal.
I could see it. What do you think you need from the Jets defense in that kind of game script for them to be in the winning lineup?
Like 8 fantasy points, something like that. I mean, maybe more than that. If you're leaving enough salary on the table, like somebody on offense probably going to put up more than that, but maybe not. I think like in a game where the offense totally falters, I could see nobody on the Jets offense putting up more than 8 in this matchup with Trevor Siemian at quarterback. Probably Breece Hall will. But yeah, I could see the Jets defense being like 8 fantasy points being enough on FanDuel.
Throwback from a Beef Squatch in the chat saying captain kicker of K Hunt. Yeah, that was a good day when Eric read that super chat and got the name a little bit off there. Actually, one of my favorite moments in the history of live before lock shows. So we round out the other players that we're getting to the most of here. Browns defense, a lot of Jerome Ford in the MVP, who I mentioned that I liked a good amount before as well. And oh boy, here come the bots in the chat. But these are the stream bots. These are not the unfortunate porn bots.
Yeah, I know. We've lost our porn bots.
Yeah.
What do you think we did wrong to lose the porn bots?
I don't know. I think you stopped wearing to make flannels or something over the summer.
You might be right. Yeah, could be that.
All right, guys. Other than that brings us to lock. This show went really quickly. Thank you very much for watching. If you guys have not done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to Owner's Box for sponsoring the show. If you guys want to sign up for any NFL package at Stochastic, if you want to check out the lineup generator, just build them lineups on over here. Less than $15 for the lineup generator. You're going to build lineups for you. If somebody wants more of a process where you could have more influence over the lineups and what's going on, check out our NFL package. Our data package includes projections, includes the contest generator, includes the Sims tool, so you can build lineups on our site, you can simulate them. It's got everything you guys need. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a great night. See you back here tomorrow. Peace out.